everyone, to another episode of Pivot and Prosper. I'm your host, Joe Nahe with LFG Business Group. This is a podcast where we speak with entrepreneurs, business owners, and C-suite executives to hear their stories of growth with relentless perseverance. Today, I have the joy of introducing Steve Tate from Los Angeles, California. He's the founder and chief creative officer of Rank and File, which helps emerging brands tell authentic stories by combining performance marketing with creative development to engage consumers. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me here today.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Now, I know before I pressed record, we could have kept going and going and going, right? A great conversation about what you do, what I do, the industry and marketing, engaging with folks, all of the above, ad creatives, you name it, right? So let's kind of inform everyone who's listening and watching now. Tell me about your current role and what problem your business solves and ultimately what you've created as a solution.
I think the ultimate problem we solve is providing a small boutique offering as a digital agency that allows entrepreneurs or founders of e-commerce, primarily e-commerce businesses, to leverage decades of experience from experienced strategists and not necessarily get handed off to more junior folks, which often happens at the bigger agencies. And that's sort of the business model or the main problem that we solve. So they're talking to people who have either been in their roles in-house at brands or have years or decades of agency experience at helping brands grow. And then I think, my role specifically as founder and chief creative officer is to lead small account teams or pods that are aligned to different clients of ours and oversee not just the strategy, but also the execution. So I sit pretty closely with a lot of the systems still, and not afraid to, roll up the sleeves, get in there and figure out what some of the problems could be. And then also obviously, there's team leadership involved in that and just overseeing strategy.
I love it. Yeah, that's that strategy, that creative mindset and thinking. I think it takes years to sculpt and train, see what works, how the psychology of people, what makes them click. We talked about, UGC content earlier and how people are sniffing out with authenticity and such, and really thinking outside the box in a almost disruptive marketing type manner it takes time to build up what that is, right? It doesn't come immediately. Right. It takes experience and growth, which is, hats off to you and your years of experience and providing this for other folks. What if you say you've struggled with the most while operating in your agency, your current role?
Yeah, I think the biggest struggle of an agency or any consultancy is scale, is trying to service enough clients to be profitable, basically, while also keeping quality and scope of work very tight. So that challenge is always there. It's kind of like a daily thing that never really fully solves itself. I think early on, I knew I always wanted to stay small and I wanted to kind of be in control and ensure that quality, the output of the agency and the business was very high. Obviously, we mentor junior folks. There aren't junior folks on the team like junior designers or junior paid media analysts, but at the same time, that's not the bulk of our team. Mostly the folks that work for me are also fractional individuals. So some of them, such as more senior designers, they have their own businesses, they have their own clients, but they're partnered with me and my agency on several clients. So we collaborate in a sense and we partner in a sense in many ways. That's also true for production partners. So, we have production partners that shoot the slickest content out there, and they work with some of the biggest brands on the planet. But at the same time, we can utilize them and their services in a way that benefits a small client that's still going from 0 to 7 figures. They're still on that journey. And so, early on, my main goal was to level the playing field for a lot of these younger indie brands. Now we're entering this new phase with AI and with tech and with a lot of the playing field being level. And so it forces all of us to kind of take account of that and take inventory of that and realize like now it's the fact that everyone can shoot like content that looks amazing or produce content and landing pages at a like rapid fire rate. That means there's a lot of nuance that has to take into account. You have to kind of be a lot more human and a lot more empathetic than you were, and a lot more creative, I think, actually.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think especially with, geez, meta ads that are run or some performance max ads, whatever you want, a PPC or meta ads, right? Just catching that hook has to be even more powerful now than ever, and understanding what that message is. I think something too, which I love talking about, and I love hearing everyone's perspective on it, a brand voice behind what that product is. I've seen multiple companies go, well, just make an ad against people that like my stuff. Well, what kind of a brand are you? What kind of emotional feel do you want someone to have when they see your, maybe it's a voice they hear, a logo they see, a color, a theme, a song, whatever, right? Is it funny? Is it serious? Is it, what does it all look like? I'm interested to know what that process is in defining a little bit deeper of a brand voice for a new client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that work sort of just involves a lot of discovery, oftentimes, and you could kind of cut to the chase and sort of limit all the hourly fees that oftentimes annoy founders and brands by just uncovering what the brand's why is and why does it exist? Why do we care about you? Why is it this team at this moment of time that everyone should pay attention? And so uncovering that really does uncover the motivations behind it. And the voice oftentimes is sort of, built off of that, because where it's coming from and the reason why it exists, it really does inform the voice and it gives it that unique perspective. That work also helps us position the brand as well, obviously, amongst potentially several competitors in the space. So if it's a commodity brand, you need that voice to be very distinct and clear. And you need the creatives to be very distinct as well. So it all goes into a lot of effort into brand building. It's not a beat and a process that can be skipped. It does require a lot of work. And sometimes I think founders feel like, it's done, it's uncovered, and they come to agencies or consultants feeling like they've already done that work and they're just handing it off. Unless there's someone on the team with that marketing lens and that kind of storytelling lens, and they've gone through a lot of different frameworks and a lot of different processes, it probably hasn't been fully baked. It's probably half baked at best. And then I'm not trying to say like the founders just don't understand that process. It's just that, oftentimes founders are not marketers, and
Right.
there's a lot of training, I think, that goes into being a marketer. There's no sort of like, pseudo government body or some kind of like licensing that happens for marketers. I wish there were oftentimes, like the way CPAs and attorneys are, or the way psychologists, my wife's a psychologist, the way she's licensed and the way she's held to certain standards and ethics. I wish that were the case for marketers, but it's not. Oftentimes us marketers, we have to go through extensive training just to call ourselves marketers, because you see that word getting thrown around a lot, and then you end up working with brands and clients that have gone through a marketing agency or have worked with a professional marketer, and then they essentially, get burned throughout this, process of basically like it's kind of like a learning experience that a lot of founders unfortunately go through. And so again, they might meet someone and then they might see a lot of different like proprietary methods or even just methods that, you talk to a bunch of CMOs and you'll see a lot of them think similarly. They've been trained along a certain process. And that's not something that's privy to most founders.
Agreed. Agreed. It's like anyone can call themselves a marketer, right? If they say I did some social media stuff for for a friend of mine who's got X amount of followers. I'm a marketer. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, I know, right? It's do you really have marketing experience? Let's look at the bigger piece here behind it. One thing you said, I love talking about. Well, a lot of things you said I like talking about, but storytelling techniques and what is storytelling, and I find that so valuable now in creating what that story is. I mean, ultimately, if I could paint a picture or bring a memory to someone to describe a product or service or a feeling that happened of avoidance or triumphant, whatever it may be, and then
Yeah,
what does it come down to? Get this or buy this or whatever
right.
the call to action is, right? That
Mhm.
story, right, of once upon a time or whatever it may be is
Right.
so powerful. Um, what type of storytelling techniques do you feel work best? I thought of a few there of painting a picture, that emotion and all, and how do you kind of go about that methodology to tell a story?
Well, so there's a lot to unpack with storytelling, and oftentimes you can't utilize the storytelling frameworks that you see, like say in movies. You can't really apply those in the way they're done for a movie, for a brand, because you just have like these very brief touch points. But one thing that you see working oftentimes is like is a format, right? And I'll give you an example. So I live in LA, and you can walk into a coffee shop or a restaurant, and you can kind of see certain things that are similar. There's a format there, right? Even if you were to go visit their social media handle or their website, you kind of start seeing, well, there's a lot of familiarity here. Like I'm in this coffee shop, or I'm in this cool pizza pasta thing that's like all the rage now. The menu feels similar, the offering, the hipster behind the counter feels similar and familiar. So that format, it's proven, it's successful, right? And so when you're the consumer and you walk into that coffee shop and you feel there's a sense of familiarity here, I like it's that old saying, I've seen this movie before. And what that
Ah,
means is, like for instance in Hollywood, the reason why they repeat certain formats is because it's based off of a success. Like certain horror movies are very cheaply made and they have a lot of profit associated with them. And they're going after a certain demographic, which is like very young consumers, 18 to 24. Um, and that one page for the movie is like right off the bat, that movie, it's a slasher flick, or it's a cabin in the woods kind of thing. Young teenagers go off in the cabin in the woods, bad things are going to happen. Same thing is done with storytelling. Again, I'm using air quotes because it's not exactly like a story, but it's more of a format. When you
yep.
walk into that coffee shop, right, you see the craftsmanship behind how they make their coffee program is like high end, and the beans are sourced from like this remote region, they're conflict free beans and all this stuff, right? And so you feel, as the consumer of that brand, you feel at home, you feel like you're in good hands because you've quote unquote seen that movie before. So that's the storytelling a lot of times that say a consumer packaged goods has to follow. They like a cosmetics brand for young millennial women or young Gen Z women. It has to follow that similar format. even boiling down to the font, the way the lifestyle photography is executed, and when the consumer sees that, they're like, I feel like I'm in good hands. There's nothing too obscure or there's not a lot that's there's twists and turns.
Sure,
Obviously,
sure.
there's unique components to them, which makes that brand what that brand is, right? It's it's a cosmetics company, and it's all these different things like it's not animal tested, all these things like that are proven to work, but it's got this one nuanced thing to it, right? And so it checks the box on something that has yet to be checked yet, right? And but there's a need for it, there's a demand for it, or an untapped audience. Those kind of nuanced twists and turns are there, but in a sense, when you look at these brands and you put them side by side, you look and you say, look, there's that kind of font again, or there's that that lifestyle component again, or look at all the box they've checked here. So that's kind of like the storytelling that is being done right now. But how do you elevate that? How do you just blow that whole thing up and say, hey, I'm going to do something completely different? Well, now you have two things. One, you might have a much bigger audience that taps into that's underserved, or you have a harder time convincing them of who you are. And that's an issue. That's when you walk into the coffee shop and you're like, wait a second, there's neon lights everywhere, and there's like a lot of weird art. I don't know where I am. Am I in good hands, or is this like, am I in a weird spot?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the analogy that I use there.
I love it. I love it. And I may steal a little bit of that to relate to
Please
other
do.
clients and explaining the process, if you will, too. No, that makes perfect sense. And I think, a analogy I use often too when people say, Joe, what do you do? I say, imagine if you are the greatest coffee bean importer of all time, right? You're going to start your own coffee shop. You did all your research. You found a location, great. And I'm going to run a bunch of ads, get people coming in. And let's say you've got 1,000 people a day that come in your front door, 1,000 a day. But at the end of the month, 5 people bought coffee.
Mhm.
Why? They came in. Well, what was it? And they could get, same thing you just said right there. A lot of that's a familiarity, right? Do they understand what they're getting? Does it make sense? This isn't the vibe I am used to. This isn't this. What was the phrase said? I've seen this before.
Yeah,
That
I've
movie.
seen this movie
Yeah,
before.
I've seen this movie before. So well said. I mean, that's ideal in the funnel conversion process as well too. Being comfortable with someone and showing them, the value, of course, but yes, this I've seen this before, which is great. Now, pivoting off of that, how do you think technology is reshaping the way we understand and reach our audience today compared to 5 years ago?
Well, I think consumers are kind of tapped out. And what I mean by that is that like that magical moment that existed in the algorithm's mind of when to serve the e-commerce brand, like you didn't know you needed this polo shirt, Joe, but you have to have it, moment in your Instagram feed. That now like has hit such a high rate and frequency that you're now annoyed by it, and so is every other consumer. And so the algorithm's kind of gotten to a point of basically clashing with the fact that human beings want to feel like they're in control. They don't want to be controlled by an algorithm. Nobody does. We all have this deep sense of desire for free will. That's what makes us human. And so when you have this thing in your hand that's essentially controlling every single decision you make, it's controlling your conversations, it's controlling how you interact with your friends, with your wife, with your family, with your parents, all these things. When you start kind of picking up on that, that's when you're like, whoa, hang on a second here. And that's what I feel like happening now. And I think it's not as like conscious or top of mind in every consumer's mind, right? It's not. It's our jobs as marketers and technologists to understand these changes. But the average consumer doesn't think this process through. Subconsciously, they're tapping out. And that's obviously taking hold in every single marketing agency's Facebook account. People might blame it on, oh, it's app transparency tracking, it's iOS caused this. And yeah, of course, iOS, Apple does hold a lot of weight in this world. And so, of course, they've caused something, they've caused performance. But sometimes coincidences happen in life and in our world. There's like a company like Apple, which basically retains a lot of knowledge that's not readily known out in every single business person's mind. And they know when to launch something. They know when to say, give the middle finger to Meta or Facebook or Google. They know when to do that. They know when things have hit in this boiling point in the industry where, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, the leveling of the playing field is there. Like, Cartier is competing for the same attention by an indie brand, a luxury indie brand that's basically like, selling, Cracker Jacks diamonds or whatever you want to call them, not ruined diamonds. They're usually like worthless, if you will, right? Or they will be once they've hit a high rate in the marketplace. And so they're competing with that. They're competing of centuries worth of brand, building with this new brand that literally just got launched with some like early stage funding and has every single access point they have to the consumer's wallet. What is that going to do? I mean, that's going to cause issues with performance for everyone involved, right? And like these algorithms, like it's almost like you can't just dial the knob on volume when you're like, our Google Ads has 10x ROI. The client's like, dial that up. I'm willing to spend, 100,000 a day. Got that. Well, that's not how it works, because there's only so much demand in the system, and it has to kind of be like evened out amongst as many brands as possible, because Google's gonna take money wherever they can. Someone saying I'm spending $100 a day, Google's gonna say, okay, well, we'll take it, especially if you don't know what you're doing on the bidding side. So I think, I know it's a long-winded question, but I think we don't know yet what this technology does as it levels the playing field and as AI takes form and allows everyone to look fancy and allows everyone to sound smart. I don't know what it does, but with other folks, when I bring this up, I think it's a path to mediocrity, because if the best brand uses what the worst brand has, the median there is now our new mediocre, right? And so if everyone's using that same thing, then it's just sort of like, now we're like looking at ads as though we were in like 1970s USSR, the ads all look the same, the ads all kind of sound the same. And at that point, I guess like the next indie brand mindset has to be formed out of that, and figure out, how do I break through this like massive conformity?
Yeah. I love all of that there. I'm digesting each piece as you said. I think that two things that really that stuck with me in what you just said there was, I mean, look at Apple, for example. And I really was just thinking about it as you said it too. In the past, there was a world of just how do we target people, demographics. All right, now where are we at? Demographics, psychographics, behavioral stuff. Apple, that's just three of probably 1,000 different components where they know how quick we move our thumbs to click stuff to the phone. I mean, it probably goes so deep at a level that they know. That's a lot of info to target the right people and hit conversions. And I think the other thing too you said, which I agree, and to piggyback on too, was people. You're right. They're tired of getting stuff shoved down their throat of like, you need this, limited time offer, right? And it's kind of going back to the phase of well, just bringing more percentage up of people like to get credit for something that they found, that they discovered on their own, right? Like, hey, I found this new restaurant that's such a gem, right? You got to come check it out. Like, I feel like I won, I got the credit. So a little bit of what I use, and it sounds like you've got a similar methodology too, is the Socratic method of, let me word it to you of, is this an issue? Is this become this problem right here? How do you feel with this? And not even give them the answer. They felt like they got the answer and they won to be able to buy the product, right?
Yeah.
Psychology.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a wild one.
And yeah, no, what you said about people want to feel like they discovered this new brand, or people want to feel cool. I mean, people want to feel different. They want to feel unique. They don't want to feel like they're, that 17-year-old girl at the prom that's wearing the same dress as 7 other girls. And
Yeah.
they want to feel like not only did they discover something that's unique and different, but they want to be a part of that scene that's being created by that brand, right? They want to feel a part of like a community. And so that's why you see a lot of times like these newer brands are utilizing community building as part of their marketing efforts, because people again, they want to feel like they're a part of something. And I know I did growing up, wearing Air Jordans. It's a status symbol. You have the Air Jordans. You now feel like, okay, I'm in some sort of elite circle, right? And I think it doesn't feel like that exists anymore. If every kid's got the Air Jordans, then you've got a few kids who don't want to conform, and now they're the cool kids. Actually, they're the ones, like the kids repping the Vans, or maybe wearing skinny jeans when everyone's wearing baggy. They're the ones that are sort of like the nonconformists. They're probably future brand builders too, or entrepreneurs. But like, they sort of see, okay, well, everyone's doing this. How can I stand out? And that goes back to what you were saying before we hit record, which was around this thing around authenticity. Like, we're all influenced by everything, by the algorithm, by the cool kid, whoever you think is the cool kid around you. And so you have to sort of not feel like you're influenced. That's the key. You have to sort of, if you're going to be a follower of something, you don't want to inherently feel like that. You want to feel like you're part of a community. And so that's kind of like these things that are coming into play right now. Where if you see, well, everyone's got access to that brand, or everyone's got access to that thing. Now, how do I break free from that? Because now that's the me, and that's mediocre.
Yeah, very well said. It's so true, right? So with all of that, how do us as marketers stay ahead of the curve? How do we, staying on top of technology is huge, right?
Yeah.
It's having conversations like this is great, pinging ideas off each other, getting our minds thinking.
Yeah.
You're never be able to replace the human thought process and what that is, right? So how do us as marketers stay ahead of the curve? What do you think?
Well, I think for me, one of the key ways to stay ahead of the curve actually is not to follow it. And what I mean by that is you have to sort of see business as partly an art form. And what I mean by that is that there does have to be a level of a vision, a grand vision in place, like an idea. That idea has to be something you really believe in, something that you want to see, come to fruition in reality. It started up here. It started in your crazy mind, inside of your office alone, and then you brought it to life, right? So that has to be part of business, because I think that the best businesses are unique. They're original ideas, and they're also the ones that every investor rejects. but for the wrong reasons. Not that like the fundamentals are off or this and that. Like there are no fundamentals with Nike in 1967, or you know what I'm saying, or Apple in 1977 in a garage. There's no fundamentals there. It's wacky, it's weird, and that's where I think that I try to follow artists more than I do business people, because I think artists have sort of like they've kind of cracked the matrix a little bit. And what I mean by that is they're not really following the same beat that we're all following. And that does make you kind of stop and pay attention and be like, well, what's that guy doing? He's a little weird, he's a little out there. But there's something ingenious about it, whatever that thing is, right? And so in that like genius is where I think businesses are often born, where they become brands, and it's more of an effortless process. It's more of an organic thing. That's why these like artists of past, you see the paintings are worth more than houses or more than buildings oftentimes. It's because that idea still matters, right? And people are still trying to figure it out. They're still trying to figure out, what is it about that idea? Do we even agree on the idea? And so if you can infuse some of that in your business, then you're onto something. And if every investor you talk to says no and you still go forward, then you probably have a chance at massive success, versus say someone who's got all the fundamentals and who's raised the funds and has the business plan, et cetera, but they're just headed down a path of mediocrity. And eventually that graph is going to start slowing down,
I love it. Very well said. It's like defining like what is going against the grain sometimes in the future creativity mindset, right? And I didn't think of it before until now that you said it. It's really resonating with you well. I mean, artists are the ultimate, in essence, creating something, the great artists that's never before been seen, that came up from a dream, a thought, everything combined, where you go and stare and what went through the person's mind coming up with this, and it just puts you into their funnel. Funny enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the reason why you don't see those big name artists on a mass produced item is because then it becomes cheapened, right? Now that everyone might be able to get a shirt that says Picasso on it, and the Picasso estate has said that this is now authorized and we're going to reproduce an image of Picasso's work on that shirt. Now it's cheapened. Now the Picasso brand's actually cheaper because now everyone has access to it. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Air Jordans. There was something in the 90s, when it wasn't like you had to really be one of the lucky few. Not to go down a rabbit hole, but people were getting shot with Jordans in the 90s. That's how sought after they were. That's how crazy that vision, or that vision of an artist, Phil Knight and Nike and the designers behind that shoe. That's how it kind of took hold in the marketplace, which was kids were running to the malls like it was like, the Beatles were coming,
Yeah.
like that's how wild of a demand there was. And so, again, I think that has something to do with it was a shoe, it was a leather shoe, but there was some kind of an idea that was infused in that, which goes off of obviously Michael Jordan and the fact that the best basketball player on the planet is wearing those same shoes, and now you have that. And so, again, if you take these names like Warhol, Picasso, I mean, even going back centuries, Da Vinci, like these are some of the biggest brands on the planet, but they're not readily available to everyone. I mean, luxury markets play that game. Obviously, they're not meant for the masses until you start seeing them everywhere, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of jumped the shark. That handbag, every every woman has that handbag or
Yep.
has a copy of it or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes cheapened in a sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now you've really got me thinking I may have to hit up a museum right after this just to yeah, just to continue to oil and grease the wheels in my mind here. This has been great, man. One final question here, which is one of my favorites, but let's say we talked earlier too before I pressed record the journey of entrepreneurship, the milestones, the hurdles, this to that, right? I could have read every single book in the planet, but nothing could have 100% prepared me for it, right? What
Mhm.
comes next, how to focus your mind to this, dedicate all of the above, right? And you had a bunch of great points earlier too. If you could give a young entrepreneur advice today who's looking to go into the marketing world or maybe just any industry, right? Or maybe if it's the younger version of yourself, you were able to whisper some advice, what would that be and why?
I think understanding your motivations in life, your primary and your secondary motivations, is very hard to do. But there are assessments that people could take, go through those software questionnaires to figure out what your motivations are. I think those are pretty significant. They're not everything, they're not the whole pie, but just helping uncover who you are internally. The old adage of like know thyself. It is truly impossible. I do believe that it is impossible to truly know oneself, but at least going inward and discovering who you are, what makes you tick, why did you make certain decisions, even as a teen, if you're super young, you're in your 20s, even as a teen to know, okay, why did you make certain decisions? Why did you pick that major? And really do some like internal discovery work. You're going to have 100 times more advantages than the person next to you who is going through, the GMAT to get into the MBA at an Ivy League. And I truly believe that because that Ivy League person is going to end up working for you if you found your company and you have a vision. Because I think oftentimes, and again, I'm not trying to get too philosophical here, but there are
Yeah.
like philosophies that I follow in life. And uh, I think going inward is very important as a business person because if you look everywhere around you and you're only influenced and motivated by everything around you, every success story around you, what you're doing is you're just kind of going through a cycle of repeating other people's journey. Your individual journey is a unique path. It's not something an algorithm can really figure out unless you give it up to the algorithm. Every consumer decision you make is through the algorithm, then that is going to inform who you are and who you become. But I really genuinely feel like young people should go inward. They should turn off social media. They should
Mhm.
start adhering to some basic principles of like reading the classics, trying to meditate, read philosophy, read history, and start uncovering why you made certain decisions and really put yourself to the test. Why did you buy that shirt? Why did you spend $200 on that thing or whatever? And then understand you've been influenced, and you need to unplug a little bit in order to start becoming an independent human.
I love it. Very, very well said. I agree with every bit of that. And honestly, I take that and I hope, and I say to my future, if I could say it to a young entrepreneur or something, but my future kids, right? I want to show them everything I've learned and compact it as much as I can to as much knowledge. And then they create, take that and carve your path.
Yeah.
Don't go down mine.
Yep.
Maybe learn I say the fundamentals, right? Rights and wrongs and such like that, right? But carve your own path. And then I can't wait to watch that blossom. This is
Yeah.
everything you said there has been fantastic, man. I think our conversation, Steve, has been tremendous, memorable. I could get the thesaurus and use a whole bunch of other words, but I certainly appreciate your time and chatting with me, and I look forward to everyone listening to this as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. I
All
really
right, and
enjoyed
one
it.
last thing, I'll put you a link to your company below so people can see, and also to your LinkedIn URL so people can find and follow you as well.
Sounds great. Appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you.
Thank